He was the leader, the man with the plan. And for years, fans believed the A-Team was one big family, four misfits saving the day week after week. But behind those smiles, something darker was happening. On one side stood George Peppard, a Hollywood veteran, proud, disciplined, and used to being the star. On the other was Mr. T, the larger-than-life breakout who turned gold chains and mohawks into pop culture power. What started as quiet tension soon exploded into one of the most infamous feuds in television history, a feud that tore the cast apart, divided the set, and changed the future of the A-Team forever. And now, decades later, one co-star has finally broken their silence, revealing what really destroyed the show from the inside.
It was 1983. Television was changing. Audiences wanted heroes who were bold, funny, and a little rebellious. That's when the A-Team was born. A show about four soldiers of fortune, fugitives on the run, helping the innocent while dodging the law. The idea was pure gold. Explosions, humor, heart, and just enough chaos to make it unforgettable. And leading that chaos was George Peppard, a respected movie actor best known for Breakfast at Tiffany's and The Blue Max. For Peppard, this wasn't just another television gig. It was a second shot at fame, a chance to remind the world who he was. But then came someone completely different, Mr. T. The former bodyguard turned actor, fresh off his breakout role in Rocky III. He wasn't trained like Peppard. He wasn't polished. And he had something Hollywood couldn't ignore: raw charisma. When he walked on screen, the energy changed. Kids adored him. Adults quoted him. And soon, so did advertisers. That's when things started to shift. Peppard expected top billing. After all, he was the veteran. But as the episodes rolled out, it became clear that audiences weren't watching for the Colonel's plan. They were watching for the tough-talking, gold-covered mechanic who stole every scene. And that, according to several crew members, is when the first cracks appeared. Peppard began to distance himself from the others. He'd arrive on set, do his lines, and leave immediately. Rumors spread that he refused to speak directly to Mr. T, unless it was through an assistant. The tension was there, quiet, controlled, but growing. And as the A-Team became a global hit, the battle for attention was only just beginning. Because what started as small frustrations was about to turn into open hostility.
From the moment the A-Team hit the airwaves, one thing was obvious. Audiences couldn't get enough of Mr. T. His look was iconic. The gold chains, the mohawk, the booming voice that made every line sound like a battle cry. He wasn't acting, he was being himself. And that raw, unfiltered energy turned him into an overnight superstar. Kids wanted to be him. He had his own cartoon, his own cereal, even his own line of toys. Every talk show wanted him. Every magazine cover had his face. In the eyes of the public, Mr. T wasn't just a side character, he was the show. But not everyone saw it that way. George Peppard, who'd spent decades building his name in Hollywood, suddenly found himself overshadowed by a man who'd been a nightclub bouncer just a few years earlier. For Peppard, it wasn't about jealousy, at least not at first. It was about respect, or what he believed was a lack of it. Castmates later admitted that Peppard could be prickly. He had strong opinions, especially about what made real acting. And according to co-star Dwight Schultz, Peppard made it clear that he didn't consider Mr. T a trained performer. He even went as far as calling him the worst actor on set. That didn't sit well with the crew, or with Mr. T himself. Still, Mr. T never responded publicly. He showed up, did his scenes, and kept his energy high, even when the atmosphere on set grew colder with each episode. The studio, meanwhile, saw nothing but dollar signs. Mr. T was the marketing engine behind the show. NBC plastered his image everywhere: posters, commercials, and international promotions. and the more they pushed him forward, the further Peppard stepped back. The power balance had completely shifted, and soon what began as silent resentment would turn into open conflict, because by the time season 3 rolled around, the feud wasn't just personal, it was public.
By season 3, the tension on set was no longer a secret. What had started as quiet competition had turned into something impossible to ignore. Crew members began noticing how Peppard and Mr. T avoided each other completely. They would arrive, film their scenes, and leave, sometimes refusing to sit together during breaks. It reached a point where the two men spoke through assistants instead of directly. Co-star Dwight Schultz, who played the wild but lovable Murdoch, later described it best. He said Peppard could be charming one minute and cold the next. He was an old-school movie star, Schultz explained, and when Mr. T became the face of the show, George didn't like that one bit. There was even a story from one of the rap parties. According to several people who were there, Peppard took the microphone and began his speech with being the star of this show. And the room went silent. No one said anything, but everyone knew what he meant. It was an indirect shot, and everyone felt it. Mr. T, for his part, kept things professional. He rarely spoke about Peppard publicly, choosing instead to focus on fans and charity work. But insiders say he felt the sting, especially when Peppard openly questioned his acting skills in interviews. The tension wasn't just about ego anymore. It was about identity. The veteran versus the underdog. The Hollywood system versus the self-made star. And while the show's ratings were still strong, the atmosphere behind the camera had turned icy. The team that once shared laughs and late-night pranks was now split in two. And soon, that divide would begin to show up in the production itself, changing the way the A-Team was filmed forever.
On the surface, the A-Team still looked unstoppable. Explosions, chases, and those famous catchphrases. Every episode felt like pure 1980s gold. But behind the camera, things were far from smooth. As the feud deepened, the production began to feel it. Directors had to plan scenes so that Peppard and Mr. T shared as little screen time as possible. Sometimes they were filmed separately, edited later to look like they were standing side by side. The tension had become so thick, even the crew whispered about it between takes. There were reports that Peppard refused to even ride in the same van to location shoots. He kept to himself, maintaining that old Hollywood distance, while Mr. T traveled with his entourage, assistants, trainers, and fans waiting wherever he went. 2 stars, 2 worlds, and one show trying desperately to hold it together. Producers began to worry. NBC executives had a hit on their hands, but they also had 2 leading men who could barely stand each other. It was said that Peppard often questioned the scripts, asking why his character, the supposed leader, wasn't at the center of every storyline anymore. Meanwhile, Mr. T was getting all the publicity deals, commercials, talk shows, and magazine covers. The crew described the atmosphere as divided loyalty. Half respected Peppard's discipline and professionalism, the other half adored Mr. T's heart and energy. But in the end, it wasn't just about personality clashes. The feud was costing time and money. Retakes piled up. Filming days grew longer. Episodes went over budget. And yet, both men refused to walk away. They were locked in by contracts, by pride, and by the fans who still loved the show. But cracks were starting to show on screen too. Chemistry between characters wasn't the same. Dialogue felt colder, and viewers began to notice. Soon, ratings would start to slip, and what came next would push the A-Team toward its breaking point.
By 1985, the cracks in the A-Team had become impossible to hide. What had once been one of the most beloved shows on television was beginning to lose its shine. The chemistry that made fans fall in love with the team, the jokes, the friendship, the energy, all started to fade. Behind the laughter, the cast barely spoke to each other. Producers were constantly firefighting, patching up egos, rescheduling scenes, and hoping the public would not notice the growing distance between the stars. But fans did notice. Ratings began to slide in Season 4. Critics said the plots felt repetitive, and when NBC tried to shake things up, adding new characters and tweaking the tone, it only made things worse. Viewers didn't want new faces. They wanted the team they remembered. Behind the scenes, George Peppard had become increasingly isolated. Several cast members later said he'd grown tired, not just of the show, but of the constant tension with Mr. T. And while Peppard still delivered strong performances, insiders claimed his heart just wasn't in it anymore. As the contrast began, Mr. T continued to rise as a pop culture figure. He toured the country, met presidents, and was everywhere, from cartoons to commercials. But even with all his success, the mood on set took a toll. As one crew member put it, the fun was gone. By the start of Season 5, the network made drastic changes. They moved the team from soldiers for hire to government agents, hoping to revive interest. But the magic was gone. The ratings dropped further, and fans slowly drifted away. When the show finally ended in 1987, there was no grand farewell, no final embrace, just quiet relief that it was over. And while the public thought the A-Team had simply run its course, those who were there knew the truth. The feud between George Peppard and Mr. T hadn't just divided a cast. It had slowly, silently destroyed one of television's greatest hits. But years later, something unexpected happened. One of their own, a fellow co-star who had stayed silent for decades, finally decided to speak out. And what he revealed changed how fans saw the entire story. For decades, the truth behind the A-Team feud was little more than rumor. Fans traded stories, journalists hinted, but no one from the inside had ever spoken openly about what really went down. That changed when Dwight Schultz, the man who played the wild, unpredictable, howling mad Murdoch, finally broke his silence. In an interview years later, Schultz revealed what life on that set was actually like. He didn't name names at first, but everyone knew exactly who he meant. Schultz described George Peppard as brilliant but difficult, a proud, old-school professional who demanded total control. He said Peppard had little patience for the younger cast, especially Mr. T. And according to Schultz, the problem wasn't just ego. It was the clash of two completely different worlds. George came from classic Hollywood, Schultz explained. He believed in rehearsals, in discipline, in hierarchy. Mr. T came from real life, street energy, confidence, and charisma. They were two forces that just collided. Dirk Benedict, who played the charming face, echoed the same thing. He called Peppard a complex man, proud and intelligent, but quick to anger when he felt disrespected. Benedict said Peppard was jealous of how easily Mr. T connected with the audience. He couldn't understand it, he admitted. George had spent his life earning that kind of fame, and Mr. T just had it. Both Schultz and Benedict made one thing clear. The feud was never about hate. It was about pride, about an actor from the old guard watching the spotlight shift to someone the industry never expected to succeed. And in that moment, the A-Team stopped being just a television show. It became a battleground between past and present, between tradition and transformation. But even as the truth came out, there was one question left hanging in the air. Did George Peppard ever make peace with Mr. T before he passed away? The answer, and what happened after the camera stopped rolling, might surprise you. When the A-Team aired its final episode in 1987, the curtain seemed to fall on a beloved era of television. 4 years, 98 episodes, millions of fans, and one unforgettable theme song. But for those who lived through it, the ending didn't feel like celebration. It felt like closure that came a little too late. George Peppard would go on to do smaller projects in film and television, but the golden years of his career were already behind him. By the early 1990s, he had largely stepped away from the spotlight. Peppard passed away in 1994 at the age of 65. And to this day, no one knows if he and Mr. T ever truly reconciled. Mr. T, meanwhile, continued his rise as a pop culture icon. He became a motivational speaker, an advocate for children, and a symbol of perseverance. Despite the feud, he always spoke fondly of the A-Team in public, often referring to it as a blessing and a turning point in his life. He never insulted Peppard, never reopened old wounds. For him, it seemed the past had already been forgiven. Then came 2010, the A-Team movie remake. Liam Neeson stepped into Peppard's role as Colonel Hannibal Smith, and UFC champion Quentin "Rampage" Jackson played Mr. T's iconic character. Fans waited to see if any of the original cast would appear. But while Dwight Schultz made a cameo, Mr. T refused. He said, "You can't recreate magic." And maybe that's true. The original show wasn't perfect. It was chaotic, sometimes ridiculous, but it had heart. And even though the feud between Peppard and Mr. T nearly tore it apart, that same tension gave it the fire fans still remember today. Because beneath the explosions and catchphrases was something real, a story about 4 outcasts learning to work together, even when they didn't get along. In a strange way, the show's message mirrored its reality. A team that could fight anyone except each other. And yet, decades later, fans still wonder, if those two men had just put their pride aside, could the A-Team have lasted longer? Or was it always destined to end the way it began, with a plan that almost, but not quite, came together?
Looking back now, the A-Team was more than just a television show. It was lightning in a bottle. A rare mix of action, humor, and charisma that could only have existed in the 80s. But like so many Hollywood stories, what shone brightest on screen often burned hottest behind it. The feud between George Peppard and Mr. T wasn't about hatred. It was about pride, identity, and a clash between 2 eras of entertainment. One man built his fame through decades of discipline. The other earned his through authenticity and raw appeal. Both wanted respect, and in chasing it, both helped create something unforgettable. In the end, the A-Team remains a symbol of a time when television heroes were larger than life, when a single line, like "I pity the fool," could unite an entire generation of fans. Even with the tension, even with the feud, their work left a mark that no argument could erase. Maybe that's the real lesson. Behind every perfect show, there's an imperfect story. And sometimes, those stories are what make the legends feel human. So, what do you think? Was the A-Team doomed by its own success? Or could things have turned out differently if pride hadn't gotten in the way? Share your thoughts in the comments. We read every one of them. If you enjoyed this deep look behind the curtain of a television classic, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story from Retro Celeb Talk, where forgotten legends, untold feuds, and hidden moments from Hollywood's golden years finally come to light. Because behind every icon, there's always another side to the story.